I'm a gooner. Oh, I love you!
Kyle Saka! It's Rice again!
Victor Gyökeres now has 3 goals in 4 games, which is great and all, but he hasn't achieved the important stats, such as runs into the final third and runs off the ball. And that is the mark of a truly great transfer. This is not that kind of gooner, an Arsenal podcast, and we're coming to you after Arsenal's pretty comprehensive 3-0 win at home to Ange Postecoglou's Nottingham Forest. We will maybe talk about the dynamics kind of in there internally with Forest. But it was a really enjoyable game. Had a lot of fun watching that. Can't wait to get into it. And we'll also do a little preview of our upcoming trip to Athletic Club, which is either tomorrow if you're listening to this on Monday, or today if you're listening to this on Tuesday morning. So with me to get into those things, first of all, is John, who you can follow on Twitter at 305cast. John, how are you doing?
Doing good. Good. That was a really fun game. There's a lot of cool stuff. Really looking forward to Champions League being back. Kind of crazy, where we are with like injuries. I guess we'll get into it, but to be able to do what we did, can't complain. So doing good.
Yeah. We'll definitely. I feel like this is going to be a theme of the season. Just kind of. I feel like every couple of episodes or so we'll touch on just how nice it is to have depth. That means.
I'll get into why I'm not as happy. Why I'm happy that we have the depth, but not as happy as everyone else, and we'll leave it at that for now.
Okay. I'm looking forward to hearing what the reason is there.
It's not as clever as you think. Maybe it is, but
we'll see. We'll see later on the pod. And then also with us is Drew, who you can follow on Twitter at GeeChyKid. Drew, how are you doing?
Gentlemen, yeah, I'm doing good. Happy Monday, kind of, sort of. I hope everyone avoided the case of the Mondays if you like a good Office Space reference.
I do.
Yeah, doing all right. How are you guys?
I'm shaking off a 2-day hangover, personally.
You would be shaking off a 2-day hangover.
That was me last weekend, and
I feel like I'm missing the boat. I need to join you guys in this
no, it's
48-hour hangover period.
It's awful. Like, yeah, last weekend we were gonna pod, remember, and I couldn't because I was like, nah.
Yeah. University throwback. I don't know if I ever want to have those experiences ever again, to be fair.
You know what it is? It was picklebacks. Picklebacks. I can't.
You asked for it.
I can't
Those will get you, man.
I can't control myself around them.
Yeah, one of my best friends from college got married over the weekend, so it was just 2 nights in a row of pretty heavy drinking. It would have been heavier if my wife hadn't been like, "Hey, you're at like 8 drinks, and you have to drive us back tomorrow, so let's cut it off here." But yeah, really, really fun weekend, and glad I got to do that. But now we're going to do this. And I'm Sham. You can follow me on Twitter at Shamsdale. You can check out the pod at Not That Gooner on Twitter, Not That Gooner, Bluesky at social, and all that jazz. But yeah, so small matter of us being forced 3-0. We went into this this time last week. We thought we were going to be up against a very organized Nuno side, and then some office politics went down. Nuno got the boot. Edu brought in a little man that we know as Ange Postecoglou. I didn't mean to call him a little man by that. I don't know. Anyway, but yeah, so just kind of before we talk about the game, what were you guys exactly expecting from Ange's side here? Because it sounds like he had 2 training sessions with this team. Obviously, you're not just going to come in there and say, "Oh yeah, whatever the last guy was doing, let's just do that for a little while." Obviously, you're going to try come in and establish your own ideas in the team and see what you can enact on the pitch in that regard. So, yeah, I mean, were you guys expecting to see them try to do some borderline suicidal, high lines halfway up the pitch, or what did you think we're going to be up against on Saturday?
No, I don't think any manager can come in and, unless you're coming into a certain level of club, can expect a result, away at Arsenal. Obviously, there's some bias in there for me, of course, but yeah, I mean, jokes aside, Ange isn't a bad manager, and I think he gets probably a pretty bad rap for certain things. But Elliot Anderson came out in the post match and talked about how the players responded well to him so far. But yes, he's only had a few sessions. It takes time to bring your ideas in. He'll be very different than Nuno as well in terms of what he expects from players, how he'll set them up, and it's hard to really enact change in 48 hours, 72 hours, or however long he was there for before the match. So I think for him, if you ask him, even if we only won like 1-0, he may have been more happy with that. 3-0, I think we deserved. But I don't think anyone at the club or the fans or even him would have expected a result of any kind. It's going to be one of their hardest matches of the season. So it came at a good time for us, of course. Like we benefited from it, but I think long term Forest will be okay. I don't think you can really gauge much from his debut for them. It's going to take him time. It takes anybody time. Look at the Man United still don't have a system, and Emram's been there for however long. So yeah, I think it's just a good example of that too. So yeah, I think when it comes to us, we played quite well. Certain players stood out, and I know we're going to come on to that in a minute, but it was a good litmus test for us. Moving into now, like when the season is going to start to become even more stressful with Champions League, with two matches per week, residual fitness issues we keep having to deal with. So yeah, I'm happy we got the 3 points. Kind of all that mattered, but going into what could potentially be a tricky opening group stage match, I think we benefited from the how Forest were basically shaken to their core, like relatively, not that far before we played them. So
Yeah. I agree with the assessment of Ange. I honestly think he's a better manager than maybe his reputation is right now. And I know some people were kind of saying that that old line of, oh no, we're getting the new manager bounce, and I did make a joke about that, but in all seriousness, I think I was expecting a straightforward match kind of from the get-go here as soon as Ange was announced, because, again, you don't have that much time to enact your plans, and, we are at least the second-best team in the league right now, so it's really hard to come to our place kind of with a brand-new system set up and expect anything. But with that being said, I thought Forest were actually pretty good on the day. I think there was a bit of cohesion. I think, even though we did dominate the match and we kind of kept them quiet most of the time, they did have a couple very threatening moments, and they have a lot of quality in that team, right? Chris Wood, one of the best scorers in the league currently. You also have guys like, Elliot Anderson, who I think might establish himself as a key part of the England national team setup. Matt Sells tied David Raya for the Golden Glove last season. They have also brought in guys like Omari Hutchison and James McAtee. So there's a lot of talent in that team, and I think Murillo as well is a very underrated center back. But John, what were you expecting from Forest, and kind of what did you make of their performance on the pitch against us?
Yeah, I mean, I thought I knew that Ange wasn't going to come in and do his standard thing. I think, he knew he wanted to play to the strengths that they've had, albeit with varying results under Nuno. So I think when he came in, we kind of saw similar to what we've seen before from them. There's a little bit of like an Ange twist to it, and I'm sure we're going to see that progress more. But I think I'll tell you who I think really would have helped them yesterday is Zinchenko. And I think when you add that to the mix, I think it's going to be a very interesting team going forward. And I'm glad that he wasn't able to play against us, obviously, because he's tied up on loan. So, I think that defensively they were very, very solid. And, we knew that going into the match that they had some solid defenders. Albeit, I think there were some problems on their left side. because they were having basically a makeshift left back against Madueke, who I thought had an amazing game, and I guess we'll get into that. I thought he was one of the standout players on the day. I think you can kind of go through all of them, and there's some superlatives that we can give for almost every player on the pitch, which is one of those fun days out that, I guess at the Emirates, but out on the pitch, fun day where everyone kind of has a good time, and the fans do as well. So it looked, I'll tell you, in the first half, it was like, it's going to be one of these kind of matches. They're really defensively solid. It's going to take some kind of crazy moment to break it up. And lo and behold,
there you go.
Zubamendi with one of the most insane, that's got to be top 5 best goals at the Emirates. I mean, surely. Top 5, at least.
It's definitely up there.
Yeah, definitely top 10. I mean, let's see. Wasn't Ramsey versus Galatasaray? That was that rocket. Remember that?
Yeah.
Obviously, could be a whole other section. Like Henry coming back from against Leeds.
I think Reece Nelson. Last minute against
Bournemouth.
Yeah.
I would put that scorpion kick by Giroud's scorpion kick. You remember that?
Oh,
one?
on New Year's Day? Yeah.
Oof. That's one of the best goals ever. Anyway, we're getting off track. Point is, fantastic goal from Zubamendi. Oh, and then Rice's free kicks against Real Madrid, obviously.
Yeah.
I don't know, man. There's this season and last season there's been some great goals, but what a way to kick off your Arsenal scoring record with a goal like that, right?
Yeah.
So I forgot what the question was, but yeah, I think it was a fun game.
We'll tell you what. Here's a different question then, since we're on the topic of Zubamendi. Do you think, obviously he scored a brace in this match, like you said, ridiculous volley from the corner to put us up 1-0, and then a header at the end. I think he jumped over Nico Williams. That kind of sealed the deal.
Yeah.
Put the score at 3-0 and gave him a brace. So, do you think this is indicative going forward of Zubamendi perhaps being able to contribute a significant number of goals to the team? Or do you think this is just something of a fluke moving forward? And yeah,
that's a great question. I think it's interesting to kind of look at it from the lens of what is Arteta going to want him to do going forward. I think, and not when I say him, it's not just Zubamendi. I think it's all of our players. I think there's what we've been kind of crying out for is this impetus to get the ball towards the net, right? And I think that Arsenal, especially in the last couple seasons, have been criticized, rightly so, for being a little timid in front of goal, not going for it when they have the opportunity. There are exceptions to that, but I think generally speaking, and I'm really looking at players like Odegaard, as a good example of a player that you would like to shoot more, and you look at these talented technical players like Declan Rice and now Zubamendi, and you're like, just shoot more, right? But I don't know if this is something that's by design or it was just the ball came to him and he just hit it right, and he's just a good player, right? I don't think that. I think it was a reaction. It's obviously not something that was planned. And Gyökeres was in the post match was interviewed, and he's like, it's not like I've never seen him do that in training. That's what he said. So it was like, okay, so this isn't something they worked on. It was just some kind of moment of brilliance. And but with that being said, I think that Per Mertesacker always talked about automatisms and stuff, and that was always something that we used to talk about, Drew. Remember back in the day when we were on Tom's podcast about how important it is to kind of get that free flowing jazz, being able to work off each other kind of vibe with players, and that takes time to build, especially creative attacking players. So I think once you get a player like Zubamendi, who is a DM by trade, it's going to take a little bit to get him to break this history that he really that he has of not going for goal, because that hasn't really been his role historically in any of the clubs that he's played at or in his position. So to answer your question, kind of bring it around, I don't really think we're going to see a prolific goal scorer in Zubamendi. I hope I'm wrong. That'd be great. But I think that we're going to see every player try to score more. And I think that's something that we've been asking for, and it's clearly something that hopefully is being worked on by Arteta.
I have to agree with John. I didn't know. I was going to say, I think Zubimendi has like 10 goals in 236 appearances for Real Sociedad before he came here. So he's not known for goals.
Last season he only had 2 for Sociedad.
And he's never scored twice in the same game.
Yeah.
And his career high in the season was 4 goals 2 seasons ago. So no, I don't think that we'll ever expect it. What it does show, though, and this is kind of it's almost happened with Rice now as well. When you know that they are at least capable of it, even if it doesn't happen often, that gives the opposition something they have to plan for, which is another thing that we've talked about previously in the past, where if you can find multiple ways to get chances on goal, it makes you harder to defend against. So yes, even though we might not see another Zubimendi goal all season, he might have capped out, still opposition will know this is what he's capable of, not just from outside the box, but also inside the box with that little header, which is completely unexpected. I don't know if he's ever scored a goal like that. I'd have to ask Tom if Tom was here. Tom would know way better than I do because he follows La Liga more than I do. But I also just kind of want to know who got the Farmer's Almanac from Back to the Future to predict those goals, because there were like 30 players that double captain him in Fantasy Premier League, and then he went and scored twice. So I want to know who has some sort of future vision to know if we're going to get more goals from him as well. That'd be also really nice. But no, I agree with John overall in terms of what we can expect, but I also do think, again, it's another kind of cog in our wheel that is just going to make us that much harder to tackle with, and especially moving into, City next weekend. That's a dynamic that hopefully we can kind of lean into just a little bit more.
Yeah, it's I think it's just really interesting. I don't think Zubimendi is going to obviously go on to kind of put up like Odegaard numbers from a couple seasons ago, or kind of match what Rice is going to do, but it does show that it's another player, like you guys have said, that it's another player that you're going to be able to get goal contributions out of on the pitch, and that's something that the opposition is going to have to honor moving forward now. So if you see Zubimendi sitting on the edge of the box during corners, now someone has to kind of keep an eye on him, maybe come out to him. If it looks like the ball is going to come out of the box, and make sure that he doesn't do that to them. And, I do think there is one play that I remember during the game that I thought was really interesting in terms of showing that Zubimendi can get forward and can get involved in the attack. And that was, we were building out, I think it was Mosquera who had the ball, and Zubimendi, instead of dropping in to provide a passing option, kind of sat behind Morgan Gibbs-White in coverage. And so instead, Mosquera had to play the ball out to Timber, and then Timber and Madueke did a little 1-2 on the right flank. And they played Zubimendi in to a bunch of space in the right half space, and eventually laid the ball off to Eze, who had space in the penalty area. So unfortunately, I don't think Eze's first touch was great, and therefore he ended up taking a shot that was blocked, and the move didn't result in a goal. But I think just that little moment shows that Zubimendi isn't just a guy who's going to sit in front of the back four for 90 minutes a game. He's going to get involved. And obviously we've seen him play some switches and some line-breaking passes as well. So, I think it's just, if anything, it's just very demonstrative of how much talent Zubimendi has. And I think that's a really exciting thing. Another thing in this game that I found really exciting, I'm sure you guys are going to agree as well, is just kind of the dynamics between our front three of Madueke, Gyökeres, and Eze. So, Drew, I'll go to you first here. What did you make of that front three? And, just kind of what did they bring to this match that perhaps we haven't seen for a while from an Arsenal attacking setup?
Real balance. And I think with Madueke, we talked about it on previous pods. I'm sure we'll talk about it again. He was arguably our most consistent offensive threat, at least in the first half. His ability to drive into the box to beat his man, it offers a different tactical perspective, because not that Saka can't do that, but when Saka beats his man, his instinct is to beat his man and then kind of tuck in because he's on his left foot to have a chance to go. But Madueke, when he's on the right, his whole wiring is to beat his man to get into the box to turn creator, and that offers something different in those moments. And against certain opposition, you almost want that. It also shows that we have a good problem that I don't think any of us now have any sort of worries about if he has to come in and start if Saka's not fit, or if he needs a rest, or to play him on the left, that he can contribute. And he's also settled quite quickly. His performance against Forest is far better than it was when he made his debut. And you can see how quickly he's settled in. He seems comfortable. He understands the players around him. And when it comes to Gyökeres, jokes aside about him wearing jeans, quote unquote, but I feel like, again, we also talked about this, where we knew what we were getting. If he gets into the box and you pick him out in the box, he's going to score. And that's exactly what happened for the goal that he scored. He made that run that we also often weren't getting from center forwards in the past. Just because, he wants to get forward, right? And as much as I love Kai Havertz, and we all appreciate Kai Havertz, like sometimes he'll drop deeper. And that run won't even be made available unless someone else is making it. But Gyökeres is always so hardwired to be a consistent threat in and around the box. It creates space to do things like what Eze did with the assist, or he can kind of be a little bit more creative in the pocket if Odegaard's there, same thing. It allowed Waneri more space to also operate. I think Waneri actually had a really good game when he came on for Odegaard, and I think having a player like Gyökeres there allows him more space to be more free when he is on the ball, which is important. And when it comes to Eze, I think you saw exactly what he's capable of. Again, a really incisive move, an inch-perfect pass and cross-fits a goal for Gyökeres. Again, it shows that attacking intent, right? But the ability to make decisions, which is what we've been kind of lamenting about Martinelli in the past. I know I'm going to hand it off to John for that one after I'm done here, because I know John wants to go ahead and pick up the baton. But yeah, it just shows the key difference. Because if it was Martinelli, we don't know if he would have gotten that far deep into the final third, and then all of a sudden,
and then slip and fall,
breaks on, cut back, passed it backwards. Maybe he
slip and fall
the ball and kind of dribble out on the end line. But yeah, Eze also again shows those extra 2, 3, 4, or 5% points that often make the difference between an attacking move failing or an attacking move ending up in a goal. And when you add those, the number crunch those things together, it shows I think we'll just be, as we continue to grow as a unit, I think we'll see it all pay dividends too, maybe in a way that we didn't even expect.
Yeah, I think, I 100% agree with what you said about the balance. Everything else you said as well, but the balance thing I think is really what hit me about that front three, where you have Eze, who isn't the speediest player, but he kind of glides past players because of his skill, and you saw with the Gyökeres goal just what amazing creative talent he has. That ball was launched 50 yards over to him. He let it bounce over him, and then just with one touch, passed it perfectly across the goal into Gyökeres' stride to give him an empty net to hit the ball into, which I think was just, incredible. And then you have Madueke, who is just driving. He's the player that Thierry Henry wanted in that little video of him on the touchline back when he was coaching Toronto, I think. Where he's just saying on the touchline, saying drive. That's the Henry player. Madueke is going at Morato, I think, to start the match, and Morato was in all 7 layers of hell up against him, and he created 5 chances in the match, which I don't think any player topped this weekend in the Premier League. So he was great as well. Really unlucky to not walk away from the match with a tangible goal contribution, but he was tremendous. And, I think Gyökeres really brings it together and serves as a spearhead for those two, because you have Madueke and Eze, when they get the ball in certain positions, they know where they're trying to funnel it into if they don't have a scoring opportunity themselves. And, I think there was one play during the match that really summed up just what good natural chemistry these three have, which is, Eze gets the ball around the halfway line, gets past Elliot Anderson with a bit of skill, then slides it over to Gyökeres and kind of makes his way into the penalty area. Gyökeres then dribbles across the top of Forrest's box. And I noticed that the defenders kind of sat off of him a little bit because they, like I did when I first saw this, they thought he was probably going to try to shoot from there, because that's That's the kind of player he is. He just wants to put the ball in the back of the net. But he dribbles across the top of the box, lays it off to Madueke, and then makes an overlapping run around Madueke to his right. And in the meantime, you've got a defender sitting off Madueke a little bit because you don't want to jump in and give Madueke the chance to beat you, 7-8 yards from your own goal. So Madueke has that space and time, and then he just lays it off to Gyökeres once he's completed the overlapping run. And then Gyökeres, it's a tight angle, but he fires a shot, and it just, glances off the post and goes out. Maybe another day if he tried that shot, we're talking about a brace for Gyökeres. And I just think that sequence showed a lot of dynamism, a lot of skill, and a lot of threat across all three players, where you had Madueke kind of commanding his defender and kind of making him static because of the player that Madueke is, and then you had Eza drawing attention a little bit, so you didn't have a defender following Gyökeres, which allowed Gyökeres to get into that space for a shot. So I really enjoy that front three, and it kind of makes me wonder what we're going to do when Saka comes back. But John, I mean, do you want to add anything here in terms of what you saw from Madueke, Gyökeres, and Eza in terms of the balance? And if not, what do you do when Saka comes back?
So I think the only thing I would just add is, that left-hand side looks so good now. I mean, all of our attacks started going down there, and it's great to see that. I've been crying for that for seasons now. And then on the right, what a tenacious player he is. And he's just a volume player. He'll just keep going. Madueke is. So he'll just keep going and going and going. He just doesn't stop. And he's granted, I would like to see him do it up against a legitimate left back. And if he could still do that, that'd be great. Because I think that's still, we have to keep it in context. But to the follow-up question about Saka, Saka is the main man at this football club. He, as great as Madueke was, he's not going to be starting over Saka, in any game where you absolutely need a win. Although, as I say that, I'm thinking maybe there's cases where there's certain things that Madueke could do that would maybe be beneficial or better, and they'll know, like, if they have a defender that's extremely difficult. That struggles to deal with direct, athletic players, you may want to put Madueke on instead of Saka. But then again, Saka can handle that too, because he could be very direct and physical when he needs to be. So I think ultimately Saka is going to be the one that gets the starts. Like, as great as Madueke was, Saka is the guy. So, but what's interesting is what really sucked about the injury, besides obviously losing our best attacking player, is that I really wanted to see the relationship between Saka and Gyökeres develop. I thought that would be really, really interesting, and because I always imagined back in last season, for example, when you had those little triangles between Ben White overlapping and then Saka dropping in to the corner of the box, that area, and then Odegaard doing his little thing right there, and then just imagining having Gyökeres making runs or just being a presence in that area to get the ball to, or dragging defenders around, making space, really made me excited to see that. So, that's part of the deal with injuries, unfortunately, and there's other parts of the deal with injuries that I don't think have been talked about very much, and that's kind of like a hint at why I'm not as happy with the depth. It's a weird way to say it, but yeah.
So, tell you what. What about the depth is concerning you? Because injuries, unfortunately, were, again, a talking point in this game. We had Odegaard go down the 7th minute with a re-aggravation of his shoulder injury, and Winery stepped in. So is that what you're hinting at here?
No. It's kind of weirder than that. So I think we had a plan going into the season. I imagine that Arteta, obviously, leaving it open to seeing how the team progresses and trains and the kind of interplay that develops over the course of a season. But I think he looks at each game, as with his coaches and everything like that. He's keeping an eye on training, and he has like a kind of an idea of who's going to be good for what positions or what games, or how it's obviously like an ongoing dialogue about like how he wants to rotate players and stuff like that. And when you have this many first team players, there's no way that we could have anticipated or had the expectation that was going to happen. So so they had to switch things around now, and you're getting players that are playing a lot more minutes than they probably would have prior. And there's, I think, pros and cons to that. The pros to that are obviously that it shows our depth. It shows our that they get actual more substantial time to develop connections with their teammates and things like that, like those automatisms and that jazz kind of thing going on where you can kind of improvise and read off each other. All that's good, but in terms of like physical load now, I think we were kind of, I think it's a negative, because if we have our backup players, or quote B squad, although that's not how Arteta looks at them, if you have them on the bench and coming in only to make impacts here and there, it's less of a chance of them getting injured later on down the road. They're going to be fresher and to make those impacts, right? So what ends up happening now, even though the depth is great, is you have a player that comes in, is playing more than anticipated, and then now you have the main player that was injured. Like I'll stop speaking generally and talk like specifics. All right, so Saka is probably, we can all agree, he would be playing and starting most of the games while he's fit, right? We'd all agree with that. Okay, so because of that happening, the pros of that are he gets to gel with players like Odegaard and Gyökeres, and then it allows like your Madueke and those kind of players to come in and make an impact. Now Saka's out, so those players need to take over. They need to play longer. So their effectiveness, I think, as impact players later on down the road, which was initially probably the plan, is going to be potentially diminished because they're having to do so much work now. And then at the same token, when Saka does come back, it's then you have to integrate him back into the squad, and then there's going to be like kind of like an awkwardness in how you approach that. And so I'm not saying I think on balance, obviously the depth is an amazing thing, but it's still extremely unfortunate, and I'm still upset that we have to have these players play as much as they are having to play. I imagine that the plan was different and we had to pivot. And I kind of wish, and it sucks because unfortunately that's just how it is being an Arsenal fan. I just want Arteta's plan to go right from the beginning of the season and not like horrifically wrong like it is now. Luckily, we're still coming away with the points and still playing well. But I wanted to see the plan, like this big summer, and then like see how he intended to effectuate it. And it probably wasn't like this, let's be real. So I wanted to know what it was like.
I see where you're coming from. I think for me, I wonder if maybe this was the plan, and not necessarily for Saka to get injured and Havertz get injured and all that, but I wonder if the plan was just beef up the squad, sign a player who can replicate Saka very well, sign multiple people who can play on the left wing, sign a striker who can compete with Havertz, so that, at the end of the day, if things do go wrong, they can only go so wrong.
Yeah, you're right. That and I think there's a difference in that. That is 100% the plan, and that's what the plan I'm talking about was how often these players are playing and when. And how many of them are playing because of all the injuries that just started coming one after another. That's not the plan. We did not I think in a general sense we planned for injuries by getting like for like players and having a bigger squad. 100%. That's the benefit, the positive part of the depth that we have. The negative part is that it's showing, that the negative part is just it's having to happen on such a big scale that was not anticipated, and it's kind of weird to say that, right? Because obviously they anticipated people getting injured, which is why you have this big squad. Like that's why we did what we did. But I can't imagine a world where we anticipated Saliba, Havertz, Odegaard, Saka, Ben White, all these people injured like at the same time. This early on, that cannot be something that we anticipated. Like we planned for it in the same sense that like you plan for a bad scenario, but you don't anticipate that bad scenario happening. You hope that it doesn't. But the luck that we have is that's the negative part for me. The luck that we have is forcing a different timeline of integrating these players than I think ideally and optimally Arteta would have liked. And I really wish that he had what he liked. That's what he would have liked, like an optimal scenario for him. I would love to have seen that play out. I was really excited to see that play out. But we can't have nice things at Arsenal, especially when injuries are concerned. So I guess that's dumb for me to have assumed that was even a possibility. So clearly we're cursed. So
yeah, I think the nice thing though is that Saka and Odegaard and Saliba and to an extent Havertz aren't out for long periods of time. Mm-hmm. And it sounds like White's current issue is minor, although I do want to talk about him later on. But so in that regard, it's not like we're going to have guys like Madueke and Gyökeres playing full 90s week in, week out for several months, which is nice. And also we're kind of using Marino to close out games as well. So I think at center forward for Gyökeres. But yeah, I think while it isn't ideal, I think we are now built to cope with it, and I do think
we
once
totally
players and I think once players return, I don't foresee like a big issue with kind of people getting back into the swing of things and dynamics and all that. If anything, I think it might turn out to be a blessing in disguise, where we do get to bed in the new signings quicker than we expected to, because they had to come in and play minutes and get adjusted to Premier League and Champions League football.
Alternatively, like the risk is you end up risking injuring those players too. So, because they're all of a sudden now thrown into it. But look, they're professional athletes. This is kind of part of the deal, right? So I get what you're saying. I see the silver lining that you do. I'm just upset that we were forced into this situation, and would have loved to see them be able to come in the way that was anticipated by Arteta. That being said, they're playing really well, so you can't really complain. Yeah.
Drew, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I don't have much to say about it. I mean, I think I understand here we go again, commander kind of vibe about the injuries and such, but at the same time, John was kind of talking about it, like the Arsenal curse, and we can't have nice things. And he was saying that in the group chat before the season even started. So I have to tip my hat to John for.
I don't want to be right about these things, guys. Earlier in the season when I talked about Liverpool plot armor FC and we can't, and holy crap, or what are we seeing right now from Liverpool? It's how they can't keep getting away with this.
No, hopefully they don't. But I mean, again, I understand. And
I don't want to be right about these things. Is what I'm saying.
No, I get it. And we forgot to even mention that Nergard is still also out as well. So there's another one to add kind of to the list. But at the same time, when you build your squad in the right way, and I say that in the right way because when you compare someone like us to a Chelsea who have just stockpiled munitions for munitions' sake and there's no clear direction, it's different. We've gone and given us some really good protection in terms of not just avoiding the red line, but when injuries unfortunately do happen. And I do think maybe one or two players maybe weren't 100% coming into the season, and that's okay. Maybe in a way we also kind of almost knew that as well. But that's just a theory, of course, but yeah, it definitely helps us ease some of that anxiety, at least a little bit. Yes, it's frustrating that we've got this many key players already out. We're a month into the season or whatever. But at the same time, if we didn't have the summer we had, and these injuries still happened, who even knows where we'd be in the table in terms of results going into a Champions League?
Totally.
First group stage match. So that's where I'm at. Like, it sucks that it's happening, but also at the same time, we couldn't have wished for a better result in terms of A, how we handled the summer, but B, the fact that the players that we did bring in are already bedding in very, very quickly. We've mentioned Madueke. Mascara looks like arguably another one of the signings of the season at £13 million, given how seamlessly he's transitioned into the team. Eze is already coming up to speed quite quickly. Zubamendi is already looking like he's been here for quite a while. So all those pieces, and then Gyökeres as well. So yeah, I'm not even like worried about that kind of thing. I think it's, like I said before, they're good problems to have because I agree. I think once Saka is fully fit, he'll start over Madueke.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, we have the empirical proof in front of us that the level will not drop almost at all if Saka is rested and Madueke comes in. That's exactly what you want for those key positions. For contribution. So I think we couldn't have put ourselves into a better position to really genuinely go on and hopefully do the thing this season that I'm not going to mention right now.
And obviously, if you're asking Madueke and Gyökeres and other players to fill in for, the quote-unquote starter for an extended period of time, then that's when you start getting, big risks of injury because then you're driving other players into the ground. But
that's what I'm getting at, Jan. Like, it's basically it couldn't have been the plan at the start of the season for these players to play as much as they are. It couldn't have been the plan for Zubamendi to play as much as he is. Norgard was good. This is a guy who was never injured his entire career. I guarantee you we brought him in so that he could share that load, especially early on when he's getting used to the Premier League. Luckily, Zubamendi's hit the ground running. But, there's still a lot more physical load that they're probably getting than was anticipated or probably ideal or optimal for them. That being said, they're doing well. So that's kind of the duality of it for me.
I will say in that regard, it's still early in the season.
Yeah.
And, we're 4 games in now. It's only been a week, game every week, and we already had an international break. So I'm not concerned about it yet, but if we're in December and Saka gets injured again and Havertz is still out and White still isn't playing, and like Timber and Madueke and all those guys have racked up like 2,000 minutes at that point, then I'll start getting really worried.
I'm not losing sleep over any of this right now. It's just something that's kind of just like it's that's just kind of, it's like the fly in the ointment. Is that right? Yeah. It's like it's like rain on your wedding day or whatever Alanis Morissette said. It's just kind of like the annoying parts of things. Of this whole scenario, as good as everything is, that's like the only negative part of it, in my opinion. That's not getting talked about a lot, I think.
Yeah, no, I got you. Yeah, I think it's something to keep an eye on, but not DEFCON 1 at the moment.
Right.
So, kind of with injuries in mind, right? I do want to kind of talk about Nwaneri, right? Because Odegaard went down again with his shoulder injury. He hasn't traveled to Bilbao with the rest of the team to take on Athletic Club tomorrow at the time of recording. And so Nwaneri filled in against Forest, and I thought he looked pretty good. Started off a little slow, I think, but really showed some chemistry, especially with Madueke. I mean, just with the front three generally. He was linking up really nicely with Madueke and kind of just, really keeping the attack clicking and moving pretty nicely. And I think his carrying ability was very instrumental in that. So, Drew, how did you feel about Nwaneri's performance? And, is this... Do you see him being able to start, maybe in coming matches like Athletic Club and City and beyond?
I don't know. I think the goal is to want to see if he can step up when the opportunity presents itself. So yeah, I think I wouldn't be shocked if he started against Athletic Club. I also wouldn't be surprised if Arteta kind of kept it slightly conservative and shifted Eze essentially, and then started Martinelli. I really don't know what the plan's going to be, but I do think Arteta will give him the chance at some stage, depending on how long Odegaard's out for, or whatever rotation we need to do. And I think his performance against Forest probably almost came at the right time. It gave something for Arteta something to think about. Like if he didn't come on in that match and played the way he did, I don't know if he would have started just in midweek. But given the way he did perform, I think that might be something that you could almost reward in a way. And I don't think him starting and then obviously keeping Eze out on the left and then not bringing Martinelli into the left. I don't think our capabilities in attack are diminished by doing that. Obviously, Martinelli and Nwaneri are two different players, just in terms of like who's featuring in the 11, who isn't. What's important to me though is if it's going to be Madueke, Gyökeres, and Eze as the front three, or rather, it should be that we should maybe keep working on that dynamic a bit longer, depending on who and how our fitness looks moving forward. Saka's going to be out for a little while longer. If Odegaard has to miss again the City match, it might behoove us to actually try to make sure that that front three remains but are still given the opportunity to gel on the pitch, right? So if that's the case, then I think starting Nwaneri would make sense rather than trying to shift things around a little bit. In terms of his performance against Forest, yeah, I think he did what we expected him to do when he first kind of broke through into the first team. For me, the biggest thing now is when he gets those chances, he has to be consistent. I think that the biggest concern I always had with Nwaneri is not how good of a young player he is. I think he definitely had a tendency to drift far too often, have little bright spots and then fall by the wayside, and then bright spots again and then fall by the wayside. But that always improves when you age, when you develop as a player, right? The older you get, the assumption is the older you get, the more consistent you become as a player, instead of just kind of having those little bright spots and then nothing comes of it. So for me, I want to see that more from him. If he plays again in midweek, whether if it's off the bench or if he starts in the 11, I just want to see him be consistent in his contributions and the way he performs in those moments. And if you can do that, then that should alleviate any kind of maybe residual concerns that people have regarding if we can rely on him more heavily, depending on how the squad selection goes and injuries and that kind of thing.
Yeah, I think what we're going to see with Nwaneri is a very selective use of him, depending on the kind of team we're up against. Honestly, part of me kind of expects Marino to start as the right 8 tomorrow. And
I wouldn't be shocked by that either if he did.
Yeah, I think, and we can talk about this more when we preview the game, but I think most of the team is going to be unchanged, and I think Marino's going to come in instead of Nwaneri, just to make sure that you kind of have that physical domination of the match. But yeah, it's it's really encouraging, because I keep thinking back to the Liverpool game when we needed a goal and Dauman was picked to come on over Nwaneri, and I thought that was just maybe an interesting indication of perhaps where Arteta's faith and his trust lied in that moment. But yeah, it was really encouraging to see Nwaneri immediately get the nod early in the match to come on for the captain, and I think he repaid that faith. John, what did you make of Nwaneri's performance against Forest, and do you agree with Drew here in terms of how the usage we might see from him during Odegaard's absence?
Yeah, I think that I don't know if he'll get every start. Like you said, I think that we'll see some rotation between him and Marino. I wouldn't be surprised if we see Eze kind of in that position, and then put Martinelli on the left sometimes, or Trossard or something like that as well, especially in like the early rounds of the Champions League. I could see that maybe happening. I'm not saying it would. I'm just saying, that's a possibility as well. In terms of what he actually did, I thought he deputized that position pretty well. I'm gonna say about Odegaard. I love Odegaard. I'm gonna preface it by saying I love Odegaard, but I do think he can be a little too cerebral sometimes for his own good. Sometimes it produces some of the most magical moments, that the team has. Oftentimes it does. But there are cases where it's kind of that Theo Walcott effect where he overthinks things sometimes, and it either breaks an attack down or slows it down or whatever. I'm not going to assume to know more than Odegaard does. Like, I'm guessing in that moment there's probably a reason why he did what he did. But seeing it from the vantage point, like on TV or in person, it does frustrate me with him sometimes. And I think with Nwaneri, I think that fear is a little bit less. Because of his age, because of kind of what he's trying to prove, because of all that stuff. I think he doesn't play it as safe as Odegaard does sometimes. And I think this Forest game was an example of that. It was almost a breath of fresh air to see that kind of attacking style play, it wasn't really an Odegaard impression. It was Nwaneri showing that he can do a job, and it was a very disciplined job that he did. Way past his age, it did not look like that. That young kid out there. It looked like a very seasoned player that was making right decisions, and that was body movement, body positioning, getting the ball to the right players and the right foot with the right pace in certain areas. Going and doing his defensive work, doing pressing work. He was doing it all. So I that's a very promising for him. I know before the season started, and even last season, before the last season started, I said we need an Odegaard backup, and I got I was on a group chat, and I got we go, we don't. And what happens? Odegaard gets injured, and we really did not have an answer for that. And I don't think Nwaneri got the chances to actually make that role work for him last season when Odegaard did get injured. And I think it was probably for the best that maybe he wasn't ready for it, and now Arteta feels that he is. You look at the contract situation that he has now, and they put a lot of faith in him to do a job. And I think we're kind of seeing that. We saw that rather against Forest. So again, I think to sum it up, I think he did really, really well. I think that there are certain things about him that I like more than Odegaard. For now, I don't know if that's going to maintain, and it's obviously one match. So it's going to be interesting to see how he kind of progresses, because you don't get these opportunities very often. All right. And what did we say? We said we're worried about an 18-year-old coming in and having that much of an important role, and that we just hope that when it does happen, he realizes what an opportunity is and he takes advantage of it. And I think that's what we saw yesterday, was him realizing what an opportunity he had and taking advantage of it.
Yep. And I think he showed his class as a player, and I think he's earned another opportunity. I think it just depends on the opposition, really. Yeah. I think, to kind of put it plainly, I still think Arteta is going to opt for Merino in situations where he wants to make sure that we have physical dominance in the midfield. And I think in other situations where perhaps that's covered by other players, or we're up against opposition that isn't necessarily formidable physically and athletically, or we're up against a team that's really just going to put 10 men in the box and try to make us break them down, I think that's when you're going to see more of Nwaneri. So, but yeah, he took his chance, and I think Arteta should be pretty happy with what he saw. So, real quick, I just wanted to touch on Mosquera, because I think he had a great performance as well. He was, very reliable in build-up, which is always kind of the biggest concern I have with young center backs, just the decision-making they're going to make on the ball, 15 yards from their own goal. I think he was great in that respect. Again, athletically, he just seems to be an absolute freakish specimen. He dealt with Chris Wood really well. He already has the pace and the muscle to deal with the threats in the Premier League, which I think is just highly encouraging. So, I'm trying to figure out how to phrase this. Do you think he has kind of put himself in a position where if Saliba is not 100%, let's say Saliba is 80%, when the City match rolls around. Do you think Mosquera has put himself in a position, and John, I'll come to you first. Do you think Mosquera has put himself in a position where Arteta would be right to say, I'm going to start Mosquera against Manchester City? Or do you think, he's solidified himself as someone that we can rely on if the first choice isn't available, but he's not quite at that level where you should be throwing him in to compete with like the likes of Erling Haaland?
So here's the thing. Every 3 points is kind of the same, right? It kind of is and kind of isn't. I don't see City, and hopefully this doesn't come back to bite me, I don't see City as a real threat for the title this season. I don't. I don't think they're one of the favorites. I don't think that's a controversial opinion as we stand today, United thrashing aside. With that being said, I think if Saliba is not 100% going into this match, and when I say 100%, it could be whatever the percentage is that is not optimal or ideal for them to start, understanding that he has an issue that is kind of tricky potentially. Don't start him. I think that Mosquera has shown that he can come in and do a job and look like a Saliba regen in many regards. And again, I'm a little hesitant there only because I don't want to say, it's just Newcastle, but it kind of is, right? There's a big quality difference between Newcastle and Man City. So if I'm thinking, all right, if Saliba is ready to go, if it's not even a question, it's healthy, maybe he's not 100%, but it's at whatever the percentage is that we know that he's probably not going to injure himself again, you go with Saliba, right? I mean, that's how that is. But if there's any at all question, if that percentage that he's at gives, a fence-sitting kind of situation where we're not sure, by all means, start Mosquera, see how it goes for half or whatever, 60 minutes, and kind of do it that way. I think he's earned my trust in that. I think he could start a game and be good enough.
Yeah. Drew, how about you?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's any player we currently have in our senior squad that I don't trust if we were to have them come in and start. And I think that's almost the point that we've been kind of banging on along since it became clear what we were doing this summer. So, I mean, I don't know if I would want to heavily change things. Like, you want to get off on the right foot to start the group stage. There will be a few tougher fixtures than Athletic Club, and that's tough in its own right. So I do think Arteta wants to kind of almost make a statement. And we didn't see a ton of rotation last year in Champions League either when we played. And there's a reason why we ended up, third in the group stage. Beyond that, I think it's because he took it seriously. So I don't think we'll see many changes. If there are changes, I won't even question them. I kind of feel like that's where I'm at with the team. That's where I'm at with when it comes to like my faith in the players' abilities. So yeah, I think we just kind of have to see what he decides, and then we take it from there. But my instinct tells me that he'll put us in the right position to make sure we get 3 points, and that's kind of where I have to place my faith in at the moment.
Yeah. I think. Look, I mean, Saliba trained today. He was on the plane to Bilbao, so my guess is he will play. But it is encouraging, right? Because now we're talking about Mosquera having given a good account of himself at Anfield against Hugo Ekitike, and he also helped. I mean, he played 83 plus minutes and kept a clean sheet against one of the top. What was Chris Wood? Did Chris Wood win the Golden Boot last season? I think he did, right? But if I'm wrong, correct me. But he helped keep a clean sheet against one of the top scorers in the Premier League last season, if not the top scorer. I don't remember off the top of my head right now. But yeah, I think he's been really impressive in his early days at Arsenal. I do think the time is coming when maybe you should sit him down for a little while, and that's why the timing of Saliba's return is nice, just because, again, this isn't a linear thing, and if you play Mosquera week in, week out against opposition, they start getting tape on him, they start sussing out his weaknesses, he starts, kind of losing stamina a little bit because of the minutes he's playing. So, especially because he's a young player, I do think he's not always going to maintain this level of consistency. But yeah, I think moving forward, just knowing what he's capable of and having seen him fill in both at right back and center back, I think is highly encouraging. But yeah, Saliba trained today. One player who did not train today was Ben White. And, in White, we're talking about a player who missed almost all of last season through injury. And he's missed most of this current season already through injury. So, Drew, I want to come to you first here. Are you getting concerned about Ben White in terms of his reliability?
I don't want to be, but I kind of am. Because it's not like he's at an age where he would have been dealing with like an inordinate amount of wear and tear. Do you know what I mean? So the fact that he's still like not even like really fully ready to come into the team and give us solid minutes is a concern. Obviously, I'm less concerned in the sense that we have so much cover that we can deal. But at the same time, it's a bit like it's a disappointment in the sense that I think we all took to Ben White quite well. I think when he was fully fit and on form, there's a reason why when Tuchel came in as England manager, he wanted to reopen the door for White to come back into the senior England team for a reason. Ben White is that good. So I think just from like a standpoint of missing out on a player who is of requisite quality, it's upsetting. Obviously, you want him to be fit and involved, but at the same time, we've got the players that we do, so it's less of a detriment for us. It's disappointing because I feel like if it turns out that he cannot be relied on, that'll be an interesting test for like Arteta and Berto to consider especially if this season, if he still proves to be unreliable in terms of fitness, if he still struggles with injuries, then you have to ask yourself maybe, as Arsenal continues to be smarter in the market, both in how we buy and how we sell, do we move on from Ben White? Do we sell him? Maybe goes back to like a Brighton, or maybe he goes to a club slightly below the standard that we're at, and then we've proven to be good buyers. So then you go ahead and you reinvest. That's not a question for now, obviously. I wouldn't say maybe it's not so much concern as if he can't remain fit. It's just more of like it's disappointing because again, I struggle to count many times where he's featured in the team since he came into the club where he's been bad, where he's been poor on the pitch. That there are not many moments. I think he was always at the very least you could count on Ben White for like a 7 out of 10 performance, 95% of the time, and that kind of consistency is hard to find. Especially in a right back, especially for a player who also transitioned from a team and a system that are very, very different from how Arsenal play, how his duties were almost a polar opposite in some respects. So I think that's the part I maybe missed the most, and that's the part I'm more concerned about. Can we even replicate that again through the market moving forward if we do kind of make a pass on him? But overall, I think it's just one of those things where sometimes an injury crops up in your career that you didn't expect, and then you just kind of have to deal with it.
Yeah, it's I think I'm also getting to the point where I am a little concerned just because of it just feels like, it's one injury after the other, and considering White played, like every minute of every match in the championship under Marcelo Bielsa, who, is one of the most intense coaches in football. And he also played a ridiculous number of minutes under Arteta, primarily as a right back, who also demands a lot of his players. He's turning 28 soon. Just to see him picking up these repeated muscle and knee injuries is a little bit worrying. And I hope it doesn't come to it where we might have to move on from him, but the alarms are starting to go off for me. But yeah, John, how are you feeling about this?
Yes, everything you guys said, 100%, I think is concerning with Ben White. I don't really know the extent of what's going on Hopefully they're managing it well. But this is kind of what I was getting at earlier too about like now what is Timber going to play again on tomorrow and then again against City? Like that's a lot more than we probably would have wanted him to be playing the right back. I don't know. Maybe Mascara comes in on the right. I don't know. So yeah, it is concerning for me. Not just because of him being a great player, and I don't want to see another Arsenal player that doesn't fulfill their potential with the squad because of persistent injuries, but also because of the additional strain that it's putting on the people that have to cover for him. And that's kind of the yeah, we have great depth, but then we have great injuries too.
Yeah, no, it's unfortunate, and yeah, I hope this is just a string of bad luck for White. Because we just got done with the Tomiyasu situation, so I don't want us to be right back in something similar.
Yeah.
So yeah, we'll see what happens. I'm pretty sure he made the bench for Forest, and the current news is that it's just a minor thing. So
good. Hopefully
maybe he'll be back. Yeah, maybe he'll be back soon, and between Timber and Mosquera, they can take enough minutes off him where he can still contribute where we really need him to.
Yeah.
All right, real quick before we get out of here. Tomorrow, first match of the Champions League season.
Hell yeah.
We're going away to Athletic Club, who are currently 5th in the La Liga table. They just lost 1-0 to Alaves, who I'm unfamiliar with. But, yeah, I don't think it's going to be the toughest match we play this season. But, it is an away game in the Champions League. So, John, what are you expecting from Athletic Club, and what lineup do you think we're going to go with?
I don't think we're going to see like a park the bus kind of situation from Athletic. I think they're going to go at us, and I think that's I like that. I really think that this is a kind of match where someone like Gyökeres is going to be able to bully defenders, maybe in a way that he's not going to be able to do against like against Nottingham Forest. Certainly not against like Liverpool. So I'm really kind of excited to see, I don't want to call him a flat track bully, but that's, because that's what a lot of pundits have said, and that's just completely misses the mark about the quality that Gyökeres has. But he is a big, difficult striker to deal with, and so I'm really looking forward to seeing that particular matchup tomorrow. I think that. It's going to be a kind of a special occasion, especially with players like Eze hopefully getting a start. But I don't know if that'll happen. Maybe we'll see Martinelli come in, or Trossard, or something like that. This is the kind of chance to really show our depth, where we can have 3 games and 3 different starters, across 3 matches, and then still come away with a win, hopefully. So I'm looking forward to seeing some rotation, but I think this is a good opportunity. For us to, I think we need to make a statement that opening match, right? I think we do it in the Premier League, but we need to get in there, and we really need to, put our stamp on this group, so that, everyone kind of knows. They already know we're Arsenal, but I don't know. I want to see Gyökeres like beat up some La Liga defenders. That's kind of what I'm getting at.
Yeah. I think it'll be interesting. I do agree. I think they're going to try to play us, which I project to be a massive mistake on their part, given our history in the Champions League and being able to counter on teams. But I'm going off of Iñaki Williams' pre-match conference, where he basically said we're not afraid of anyone, including Arsenal, and we're going to try play our game. Yep, please feel free. Please feel free.
Totally.
So, and they'll be missing Nico Williams, which I think, I still think he's their best player, even though he's a little lackluster against us in the summer when we played them. And so there's not really anyone else in that team I'm particularly scared of. Iñaki Williams is a good player. I think they signed Laporte as one of their center backs. So, they're going to have some long ball threat. They might try to play a few balls over the top. They have Unai Simon, who's a very talented goalkeeper. I think he, is ahead of David Raya, the pecking order for Spain. But largely, I think this is a group of players that we should be more than capable of honestly blowing away on the pitch. And so I think we're going to go with a lineup pretty similar to what we did. I think, it's going to be Raya, and then perhaps we start Mosquera at right back. No, I think we'll start Timber and then just try to get Timber off early, and then Saliba, Gabriel. I think we will rest Calafiori for this match and save him for City. So we'll bring in Lewis Skelly, Zubamendi. I think we're going to go with Marino, the more I think about it, at right 8 and Rice at left 8. We're going to really try to dominate the middle of the park. And then Madueke, Gyökeres as that front three. I do think not only is there that, was Madueke kind of talking after the Forest game about how he and Eza had never played in the Champions League before, and they were looking forward to it. So I think you'll want to give them that because players come to Arsenal to play in the Champions League. But also, I think you want to build that chemistry between the three, and the only way you really do that is minutes against opposition. So I think Gyökeres will have a great game. I am expecting that. And I'm really excited. Drew, how about you?
Yeah, actually, I think your predicted 11 is pretty spot on. I can see the logic with all of that. And again, like I said before, I think you go with the same front three for the reasons you explained. I think Marino's probably a really good shout. I think for me, when it comes to Athletic Club, I don't agree that they don't have other threats than Nico Williams, but he's clearly like the threat, and the key offensive stats, he's the leader of it. But they do have some other creative fulcrums, like Sunset is actually quite creative, Berenguer is quite creative, and Iñaki Williams does have a habit of turning up in big moments for them, habitually and historically for them, just in general. So I do think we can't necessarily write them off completely, but overall I do think that I would be kind of baffled if we don't put up at least a 3 spot against them, despite it being away from home. I do think that we have more than the firepower to do it. They've had a pretty good start to the season. I think they were on a 3-match winning run until they lost to Alaves, and losing to Alaves and getting blanked for them is actually a really poor result for them. They should have won that match, so they should be sitting on 12-12. They don't score a ton though, even when Williams was available. I think they only had 6 goals in their first 4 La Liga matches. So I just I think if it was 3-0, I'd be not shocked by that. I think there's the window for it to be a even wider margin, but I just want a good performance. I just want the 3 points. We'll get a couple goals. I think Gyökeres will score. It would not shock me if one of Madueke and or Eze scored as well. I think your 11 is spot on. I don't fear them more than I fear some other teams we're going to come up against, but I do think we have to be wary of, again, balls over the top is a really good shout. They do have some pace along the front line, so just the typical talking points that we have to worry about on our end in terms of how we're going to be hit on the break potentially. But overall, I think we should be just fine.
Yeah. So looking forward to it. I'm just so excited to watch us play again. Honestly, I think I'm at a point where I just really enjoy watching us now. And, it's fun, it's a good time, and I think we have enough talent where I'm always pretty confident about what we can do. So, we'll see what happens in Bilbao. So we'll leave it there. Thanks so much for being here with us and for taking the time to join the conversation and be with us while we talk about the greatest club in the world. So I've been Sham. You can follow me on Twitter at Shamsdale. That's John. You can follow him on Twitter at 305cast. That's Drew. You can follow him on Twitter at Geechee Kid. You can follow the pod at NotThatGooner. You can follow the pod on Bluesky at NotThatGooner.bsky at social. We're on Instagram at NotThatKindOfGooner. We're on YouTube at NotThatKindOfGooner. TikTok at NotThatKindOfGooner. And if you are listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, please do leave a 5-star review. It really does help get the pod out to more people. And we will be back with you later this week to talk about the results at Bilbao tomorrow, as well as to preview Manchester City's visit to the Emirates, which will be a cracker of a match, I am sure. So, until then, take care, get your mind out of the gunner, and we will talk to you soon. So, bye. Bye.